Now, joining me to discuss this is Elaine Parker, Chief Communications Officer of Job Creators Network. Elaine, what are we worrying about? Let's just do a victory lap and call it a day.
Exactly. Thanks so much for having me, Larry. Here's the real facts, because the president continues to not give the American people the real facts. Inflation is still at 40-year highs. It is up 6.5% over the last 12 months, and core inflation actually increased. It may have moderated a little bit month over month, but core inflation went up. And what core inflation is when you take out the volatile things like food and gas. That means Americans are still paying exorbitant prices for everyday items. And that is very hard for Americans who are struggling month after month. And as far as jobs go, Americans are still, there's a lot of Americans that are sitting on the sidelines, and the president continues to brag about the unemployment rate. But he ignores the labor force participation rate, which is still severely depressed from pre-pandemic levels. We have millions of people who are sitting on the sidelines, not even being counted in our workforce. And if all of those people came back into the workforce, that unemployment rate would actually go up by about 50%.
Elaine, Biden, of course, says that inflation is a worldwide phenomenon. So we ain't the only ones. What's your reaction to that?
Look, the inflation rate is actually still 3 times higher than what the Fed targets, and it's almost 4 times higher than when President Trump left office. It is a direct result of the reckless spending of this administration. So when you hear the president say his economic policies are working, go to the gas station and talk to people filling up their tanks. Go to the grocery store and talk to people who are trying to buy milk, bread, and eggs. They will not tell you that the economic policies are working. This reckless spending has to stop. Our small businesses are hurting tremendously. The supply chain issues are killing them. Labor problems and getting labor to fill the jobs that they have open are killing them. Plus, wage inflation is killing them. Those are the real stories that are happening out there in America, instead of what the president is reading on a teleprompter.
Elaine, talk to us a little bit more about the labor force participation rate, what that means, and the large number of people that are not even counted.
There are millions of people that are sitting on the sidelines. Under this administration, we have policies in place. We had them in place under the American Rescue Plan that was passed by the Biden administration that actually paid people to stay home. A lot of those policies have expired, but there are still many states that are paying people exorbitant unemployment compensation. A family of 4 in many states can make $80,000 to $100,000 a year and have no incentive to go back to work. Those people aren't even counted in the unemployment rate that you see. And so if all of those people suddenly lost those benefits and they came back into the workforce and started looking for a job and were counted, that unemployment rate would skyrocket. And that's part of the problem, is that we don't have enough people to fill the open jobs that are there, is that they're sitting on the sideline because they have no incentive to come back to work. This administration paid people to stay home. They killed the American work ethic with their policies.
It still blows my mind that people were paid not to work. I remember seeing a study of a bunch of economists at Bank of America, and these are not Trump people, and they said if you're making $30,000 or less, it made more sense for you to stay home than for you to go out and get a job.
Absolutely. I mean, I personally have an example of that. I had my air conditioning break during the pandemic, and I had the actual owner of the air conditioning company came out. And it took him several days to get to me. I live in Florida, so it was a little on the hot side.
Right.
And he talked to me about how he was having trouble getting people to come and work for him. And he said that he had hired a new technician who was entry level, and that he offered him a very good wage, and that the technician said he was going to wait until September when the unemployment benefits ran out, and then he'd come back to work. Well, this was July. There were still 2 more months. And I said, do you see that a lot? And he said, absolutely. People are sitting home waiting for those benefits to run out before they're going to come back to work. Then I asked him if he was going to hire him in September, and he said, absolutely not.
Elaine, you also mentioned that you believe it's changed the work ethic in America.
Absolutely. I mean, This administration has paid people to stay home. Like I said, the average family of four during the pandemic could actually make anywhere from, $60,000, $70,000 a year to not come to work. If it was a married couple, they could make as much as $100,000 a year. They were making more money to stay home than to come back to work. And so there was no incentive to do so. And that helped put us in the position that we're in right now.
Finally, let's talk a little bit about the Trump tax cuts, which, of course, Democrats said was going to deprive the Treasury of money to give away to the rich. But as what happened when Reagan cut taxes, W cut taxes, Calvin Coolidge cut taxes, John F. Kennedy's tax cuts went into effect after he died, the Treasury collected more revenue than before.
Absolutely. I can't think of a better vindication for all of us. For everyone who supported the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Job Creators Network was behind the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from the beginning. We were pushing to help get it over the finish line. And now in 2022, according to the CBO, the federal government collected $4.9 trillion. It is $500 billion higher tax revenue than the CBO originally projected. Corporate tax revenue was higher by 25%. Individual tax revenue was higher by 11%. And yes, overall tax revenue since 2017, when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, has increased by $1.5 trillion. Do you remember what the CBO said was going to happen if we passed this bill? They said it would cost us $1 trillion. I mean, they couldn't have been more wrong. But what it did was it allowed the Democrats to just malign this bill and tell people that it was just for the rich and the big corporations, and that the middle class and small businesses wouldn't benefit at all. And in fact, what it did, it ignited our economy, and we saw the greatest economy we had seen in half a century.
Now, Elaine, finally, and this time I really mean finally, and this is a political question, so you can punt if you want to. Given the midterm election and the economy, the inflation, the gas prices, all the things that you mentioned, I remember Bill Clinton famously said, "It's the economy, stupid." How then did the Democrats do so well compared to what we expected they would do regarding the House? And how did they manage to retain control of the Senate, given that most people did not feel the economy was doing well?
Well, look, I think that obviously the Republicans may have underestimated how important some of the social issues were, like abortion. I certainly think that there were some miscalculations there. But I also think that the president calculated correctly in basically putting out the student loan bailout and getting the younger voters out, because he was basically bribing them to pay off their student loans. And thankfully, the Job Creators Network Foundation has taken on this lawsuit, and we have actually succeeded at the lower courts. And we will be heard by the Supreme Court next month, and hopefully we will prevail in the Supreme Court as well, because this is an overreach by the government, and it is not the taxpayers that should be on the hook for student loans.
Elaine Parker, Chief Communications Officer at Job Creators Network, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Larry.